Welcome to the German Council on Foreign Relations, DGAP, and welcome to this week's edition of our morning briefing series. My name is Jan Stöckmann, and I'm head of the Karl Forum here at DGAP. Today, we are looking at the update on EU enlargement issued by the Commission on Tuesday, a package of 10 countries, including Ukraine and Moldova, but also frontrunner countries Albania and Montenegro, and those that are less likely to exceed anytime soon, like Georgia. Expanding the EU is now regarded as a geostrategic imperative, with the next budget cycle, the MFF, allocating more than 40 billion euros to enlargement. Tuesday's event on the occasion of the Enlargement Package was attended by High Representative Kaja Kallas, Ukraine's President Zelensky, and several candidate country leaders. Commissioner for Enlargement Marta Kos spoke highly of Ukraine's work, though also warning at the same time to prevent any risk of backsliding, particularly in the area of anti-corruption and the rule of law, in order to maintain a realistic perspective of provisionally closing accession negotiations by 2028. Montenegro was praised as the most prepared country, having made significant progress towards EU accession and being on course to complete the accession process by 2026. And so Montenegro could become the number 28 by 28, as the slogan goes. Similarly, the Commission applauded Albania for making unprecedented progress in the last year, with 2027 as a possible timeline for the close of accession negotiations. And finally, Moldova, the report said, has progressed on its path despite attempts by Russia to throw it off course, making 2028 an ambitious but achievable goal. Now, the enlargement package provides an opportunity, of course, to shed light more generally on European affairs and the ways in which our continent is living up to its enormous challenges. And so to discuss enlargement achievements and perspectives, I am delighted to introduce our speakers today. First up will be Dr. Anton Hofreiter, who's a member of Parliament for the Greens and the chairman of the European Affairs Committee in the Bundestag. He has been an MP since 2005 and was co-chair of the Greens between 2013 and 2021. A biologist by training, he has become known as one of the most outspoken Ukraine supporters in German foreign policy circles. Welcome, Anton Hofreiter. Next up will be our own Milan, who is a senior research fellow at DGAP's Center for Order and Governance in Eastern Europe, Russia, and Central Asia. Previously, Milan was with Globsec Policy Institute in Bratislava from 2010 to 2012. He was a senior advisor to the Deputy Foreign Minister of Slovakia, and before that, he advised the EU Special Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Welcome to the morning briefing, Milan. Last but not least is Dr. Linn, who's the brand new Alfred von Oppenheim head of the Europe Center at DGAP. Before joining DGAP, literally this week, she was head of the European Affairs Department at the representation of the state of North Rhine-Westphalia in Berlin. From 2018 to 2024, she was president of the European Movement Germany, and I should add that she earned a PhD on the MFF. So if anyone is an expert on things EU and Brussels, Linn, we're very glad to have you on the morning briefing. Now, before we begin, just a quick reminder that this event is being recorded and will be uploaded subsequently. We will kick off our conversation here on the panel with about 5 minutes of intro remarks each, and then open up for questions and answers. If you want to make a comment or ask a question, please keep it relatively short so we can pick up as many as possible, and ideally introduce yourself. Now, finally, just a word of thanks to all my colleagues making this morning briefing series possible. And without much further ado, can I hand it over to you, Anton Hofreiter, for your initial remarks with perhaps a big picture view on the enlargement package, Germany's role in it, and the political message that is being sent at this moment. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Good morning from my side. We can see with this package that enlargement process is ongoing, and it's now really serious. we also can see on this package that Commission has realized that's not only technical aspects, but Commission has realized that the fundamentals are key for countries. You can see that they are very clear on Georgia and Serbia, which have very big problems with democracy, rule of law. So I think after, we are still on the way that European Union now enlargement means really seriously. We all know that especially the countries of the Western Balkans, before the second aggression of Russia against Ukraine, European Union pretended that it wants an enlargement, and the countries of the Western Balkan pretended that they will reform. And it was kind of a game where everybody told the people of this country that one day they will become a member of the European Union, but nobody really, well, not nobody, but many don't really want it. That has fundamentally changed, and I think what we have read is a sign. What is the role for Germany? I think one important role for Germany is that we also have to be the bad cop in enlargement for the countries. When the last time I was in Ukraine, everybody told, not everybody, but nearly everybody, even from the government, told me, since the US are not anymore much interested, you also have to be the bad cop for us, because if not, you put enough pressure on us, there's always a danger here of backsliding. And we have seen it in summer this year when the president and the parliament tried to harm SAPU and NAPU, the both anti-corruption institutions we have in Ukraine. So everywhere I go is the expectation on Germany: put enough pressure on us that we keep track. Don't be so shy. Make it clear, because the US are not on board anymore and have lost more or less their interest. So I think one thing which is really difficulty for us in Germany is that we not only be the good cop who gives a lot of money, who helps, but also be the bad cop in a good sense, that we put pressure on the countries that they don't backslide. I think that's one of the really important roles for Germany. Then the next point is, in my opinion, that we should not be too, that we not should expect that reform of the European Union and enlargement is totally always in the same time frame, because I'm sure that we will not be able to reform the European Union fast enough. So I think that we also should be very pragmatic, and I'm really happy that the Commission now also speaks about that new countries, new members should be not allowed to use the veto as long as we have not reformed it. I have to admit I'm proposing this idea now for several years, and that Commission also says, okay, we then have member countries with slightly different rights. I think that's the correct path. Because if I look to Montenegro, you already said it, Montenegro 28. But I'm not sure if we will be able to reform the system of veto until 28. So if Montenegro has the chance to become a member, but not allowed it to use its right to veto or not to become a member, I'm sure Montenegro would choose to become a member with not veto. So I'm really proposing that it's a geopolitical necessity to enlarge. We should put a lot of pressure on the countries that they don't backslide. Good meaning pressure also helps them a lot, and be very pragmatic when it comes to enlarge that countries who do a good job really become a member, maybe with not all rights, but still a member. That's what I see as important in the big picture. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. Can I just ask a brief follow-up question before I hand over to Milan? You said it's a geopolitical necessity to work on enlargement now. Can you explain a little bit what you mean? Perhaps especially referring to Ukraine, but also in general. What exactly is meant by this geopolitical necessity? What will enlargement bring to the European Union?
We see China, we see Turkey, we see Russia, what they are doing. Russia is attacking not only Ukraine, Russia is attacking in Moldova, Russia has attacked Georgia, Russia is causing problems within Western Balkan. If we allow gray zones, these gray zones will become dangerous. And so it's in our own interest that all these countries are not anymore in the gray zone, but are member of NATO and European Union. And in this kind of way, I think it's a geopolitical necessity. And when we look to China, China attacks us very, very hard. China tries to destroy our industry. If you look on raw materials, so we need a larger European Union to withstand China. Just if you look for the German car industry, it's really important that the Western Balkan countries also become a member because China is here really attacking our industrial bases. So we have geo-economical interests, geostrategic interests, and I think we have the interest that we don't anymore have any gray zones, especially in eastern and southeastern Germany.
Understood. Thank you. So let's dive into some more details. Milan, can you pick on some selected countries and explain some of the nitty-gritty of this process? Where are things progressing? Where are they not? What are the risks? Over to you, Milan.
Yes, thank you. Good morning to everybody. I would say that this enlargement package is a reminder that we have a new commission. We tend to forget that this von der Leyen number 2.0 started in office only this year, right? So this is the first enlargement package of the commission, which no longer, for instance, has a Hungarian enlargement commissioner. And you can really see it when you zoom in on some countries with democratic backsliding, as Tony suggested, Georgia, Serbia. It's a different tone. Now, the key message for me from this annual package is that accession of new members is increasingly within reach. And I will talk more about the two frontrunners. But if you look at the formally 10 countries that are in this, that are subject of this package, that are in the process, you can cluster them in numbers 4 plus 4 plus 2, the last two being Georgia and Turkey. Turkey is still a subject of the of this annual procedure, although the Commission repeats that since 2018 there is no progress on Turkey's membership. Now, for the first group, the four that are in the accession stage, you have Montenegro, that is the only country that is closing chapters. And then you have Albania, that is the start of this year because it opened almost everything. And then you have the two Eastern candidates, Ukraine, Moldova, that are facing Hungarian veto for Ukraine. And in the summer, the Council decided not to decouple Moldova, which otherwise would be able to move on its own. But for geopolitical reasons, they are treated in tandem, and the Council is not able to grant them permission to move on. But also the Commission in this reports on both Eastern candidates underline that they need to accelerate the pace of domestic changes and that they are lagging still significantly behind the two Balkan candidates, which started accession talks years back. Now, new elements that Tony mentioned in this package is number one, the Commission wants to ensure that future member states continue to safeguard and maintain their track record on the rule of law, democracy, and other fundamentals. So in the future accession treaties, there should be stronger safeguards against backsliding. This is a new thing. So you can see that Commission is also thinking about how to design the final stages of enlargement with the first candidates. However, it also throws the ball on the Council, and this is where I think will be the whole challenge next year. Whereas the first enlargement countries, starting with Montenegro, will come closer to a finishing line, it will be all about the Council. The Commission signals with this package that we are doing our job. We are seriously helping the countries to reform, to adopt the acquis, and to become compatible with us. But eventually, the final decisions are with the member states. And this is my second point where the package is interesting for me, the new elements, new caveats. The Commission says that the new strategic imperative is improved communication. And improved communication both within the EU, with member states, within the member states, including Germany, and then also countering Russian disinformation without naming Russia, but countering information manipulation and interference in the enlargement countries. Under improved communication, I would say that, of course, the enlargement of the EU is linked to the question of internal conditions and our capacity to enlarge internal reforms. The Commission is doing something else in parallel, which is its so-called pre-accession policy reviews. Basically, the impact of enlargement on key policies, including cohesion, agriculture, institutions. They were supposed to adopt this document, this communication, also on Tuesday, at the same time as the usual annual enlargement package. I am very glad that they decided to postpone the adoption of that other document in 2 weeks. Formally, they said they need more time. I think if you do communication right, you need to first focus on the good, on the positive news and story, and then to look internally for our capacity to enlarge. Now, quickly about the two frontrunners, Montenegro and Albania. So Montenegro is, according to the Commission, on track to meet the ambition objective to finish membership negotiations by the end of next year. If you look at details, they closed only 4 chapters out of 33. They are going to close in December a few more. In March, there is another intergovernmental conference. So let's see, by half of next year, they will be at the half of chapters. So I think the goal that the Commission says is very ambitious but doable. I think it's too ambitious. I more see Montenegro closing the accession talks in mid-2027. Nevertheless, I think next year we'll be discussing accession treaty with them. Danish presidency wants to start the working group, and that discussion within the Council will define the parameters of the new membership. Speaking about Montenegro, I'm glad to do a little self-promotion of our own work within the DGAP. When we started the current project on EU enlargement and debate in Germany on enlargement, we led a consortium of think tanks to Montenegro for a fact-finding mission 1.5 years ago. We published a memo that might be posted in the show. And 1.5 years ago, we said, this is serious. Montenegro, this government will be delivering. And it's time for EU member states to support them, but also start discussing how we enlarge. Now, a few weeks ago, we went to Albania with the same partners from think tanks in Netherlands, France, and Brussels. There will be a memo on where Albania really is published next week. And we will discuss, those of you who are in Berlin, you can join us on the 13th of November for public discussion on the enlargement with the Montenegro State Secretary for EU Affairs, CDU MP Peter Bayer, and somebody from the Commission as chief strategist of the enlargement department. So I think, Jan, you were looking at the clock.
Before you do too much self-promotion, can you wrap it up in one sentence, and then I want to hand things over to Linn.
I think the Commission will really want to hear from the EU leaders, including Chancellor Merz, if they mean enlargement seriously, because next year I think is where the whole machine will start moving. So I think it's time to discuss enlargement also in Germany and intensify. I'm looking at Tony also. I think Bundestag has a role, because at the end of this process, Montenegro can do whatever they want. At the end, there needs to be a decision of member states, and I think a mandate by Bundestag to the federal government that they can move on with, let's say, Montenegro to a next stage, which would be a ratification of the accession treaty.
Thanks, Milan. And this is a good segue into Linn's initial remarks, because I think you did want to touch on the German debate a little bit, but also the process as a whole, as it is run and organized inside the Commission. And so perhaps what's the textbook accession process compared to what we see in reality? Where do you see things stand at the moment? Over to you, Linn.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Day 4 at DGAP, great honor already joining this format. I will say some words on structure and process, and then also go into a bit the German debate. I think Milan already alluded to that. I would totally agree. There's a new dynamic with this enlargement report. I think it was the first in years that was really anticipated. However, despite this dynamic and drive, we shouldn't forget unanimity looming in the council. So I think that's very important to now look towards the council and the member states. I think it's positive that the Commission is taking up the theme of gradual integration quite offensively, this more for more approach, be it roaming, standardization, SEPA inclusion. However, I think it needs to be clear that this is a road that should ultimately lead to membership and not an impasse before membership. And if you look at gradual integration, I think also on the political level, more can be done still. I'm thinking about more active inclusion of the candidates in council working groups, etc., but also in the European Parliament. We had it with the last enlargement that the candidate countries were observers to the parliament in order to get acquainted to the whole culture and workings of the EP as well. So I think this political gradual integration, or this gradual integration, should also have a political leg. Jan, you mentioned it at the beginning. I worked a bit on the multi-annual financial framework, so the EU's multi-annual budget. If you look at that within the enlargement report, it's a bit thin in that respect. So we have the MFF's Global Europe proposal, where there is significant amounts of money for enlargement. I don't want to go too much into detail, but again, here it kind of underlines the need to have a serious debate inside the Council on enlargement next year, because for the moment, the MFF proposals do not include the new member states. They do include the pre-accession instruments for the candidate countries. But if we really think about a enlargement by the end of beginning of 2027, this would need to be reflected in the multi-annual financial framework from 2028 onwards. And we need to be starting to think about that probably first half or half of next year, how to include the new member states very specifically into the new EU budget. And this is also, again, on the to-do list for the German government to build a position here in order to cater for the necessary adjustments. Milan already alluded to the question of accession treaties that now also, given the pace of events, slowly but surely need to be drafted. I also see it very positively that the Commission wants to prevent democratic backsliding through the accession treaties in the new member states. This still obviously is very vague, and it will be interesting to see how the Commission very specifically will take this up. And it might also serve as a sort of sign also for further enlargements, because accession treaties are an adjustment to the EU treaties, Article 49 of the treaties, with all the constitutional ratification strings attached on the one hand, but also posing the potential for greater reform. Tony already alluded to that, that this policy review, which will probably be published in 2 weeks' time, might also kind of open up the road to reform, because the accession treaties are kind of a vehicle to include broader reforms through the enlargement process. And then looking at the role of Germany, Milan already said that the Commission put an emphasis on the issue of communication, which is quite needed if you look at the data. So looking at the last Eurobarometer from September, 65% of the Germans do not feel well informed about the enlargement debate. And I think even more important, the support in Germany for enlargement is only by 49%, which is the fourth lowest in the EU. It's only France, Czech Republic, and Austria, which are even less support the enlargement. And this, if you compare it to the numbers from the Eastern enlargement in 2004, that used to be 69%. So it is a major change in how Germany is viewing the enlargement, and that there definitely needs to be more communication, also public communication in Germany. I think if you look at it from another angle, it might also be, the whole migration debate, which is probably also affecting German public sentiment towards enlargement. But basically, the federal government formally promotes enlargement, but what is the formal commitment to membership of Montenegro, of Albania in 2027-28? And I think here both the German public, EU partners, and the region needs a signal, a very clear signal. I would totally agree with what Tony initially said about the bad cop, but it still needs to be a communication of, when you are ready, we will be ready. If you stick to the rules, we stick to the rules. And to my perspective, this isn't as clearly communicated yet. And I think also broader society approach is needed here as well. If you look at twinning, if you look at a more active inclusion of candidates and sort of all hands on deck approach. And this is not only towards the federal government, but also the federal states, to businesses, to the broader society.
Thanks, Linn. Understood. Sorry to cut you off here. We are working hard on making those numbers in the Eurobarometer of those people that don't feel well informed enough yet to make them better. And so thanks for your insights as well. I did want to ask a brief follow-up question to you as well before we then open up for questions and answers in the audience. Since you mentioned unanimity, I wanted to ask about this proposal by European Council President Antonio Costa to use qualified majority voting rather than unanimity to open negotiation clusters, so bypassing Hungary's opposition to Ukraine's accession in particular. the Commission backs this plan, as far as I know. So can you say a few words about how the dynamics play out here?
Well, I think on paper that looks quite convincing because, as I said earlier, when it boils down to the accession treaties, there's unanimity in any case, and the whole constitutional amendment following that. So there is unanimity at the end, and that cannot be changed. So why not have more QMV, so qualified majority voting, during the process? But again, here, the devil's in the details. You need unanimity to move towards QMV voting. And this is where the proposal by Antonio Costa was, very swiftly rejected by member states. That's, I think, a general problem because we could move, or the candidates, in case they fulfill the reform criteria, they could move faster. Some processes have been hampered by unanimity, as you all know. But I think for the time being, at least, there's not really a way around it. And yeah, although it might make sense on a blank sheet of paper.
If
Wonderful.
I may to jump in here, the paradox is that some of the most enthusiastic supporters of enlargement among the member states are exactly those who don't wish to move to qualified majority vote even on enlargement. Greece is one example. Austria, they are afraid of a precedent that if you allow this in something like enlargement, then it will be used to larger foreign and security policy. And from Antonio Costa, this was, I would say, a nice diplomatic PR exercise because this was clear very much. The ground in the council was tested by German Slovenian non-paper 2 years ago on this. It's clear that there were only 16, 17 member states supporting it. Some of them later even changing their mind. But I think you don't have. This will not go through. What the Commission is doing with Ukraine and Moldova, quietly within the Hungarian veto on formal start of accession talks, they are actually opening clusters with them and preparing them to move on in the technical process within formal vetoes, as long as, I mean, they are creative in this. Eventually, there is a waiting game for Hungarian elections, parliamentary elections in April, to see if this can be solved by Hungarian voters.
Okay, let's open things up. I see one question in the chat. I'm also very happy to take questions in person if you want to raise your hand by clicking on that funny button on Zoom. And I will pick up a question by my colleague Nicola in a second. Let me just read out a question in the chat first, which has been sitting there for a little bit, on particular chapters and on the way in which the EU is really using the accession phase for necessary reforms, referring to Montenegro and Albania in particular. And one of the chapters, I believe it's Environment and Climate Change 27. So perhaps our panelists can refer to the details of working through these crucial chapters and the way and the extent to which the EU is using that pre-accession phase to exercise pressure. Let's pick up a second question already by Nikolai Zagierov, my colleague. Over to you.
Thank you very much to everyone for your statements. Two questions quick to MP Hofreiter is, what other areas of grace periods can you imagine in creating this new membership apart from veto? Commissioner Koss has stated that the principle of next enlargement will be based on grace periods for different areas of integrating member states. And the other second question is probably for Mr. Nitsch. What is the role of Serbia specifically in relation to spoiling accession of neighbors, basically Albania and Montenegro more specifically in the enlargement process? Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks. Let's start with Anton Hofreiter maybe on the question of grace period veto that was just asked by Nicola.
I have to admit, I only see the veto as really a problem. We're talking a lot about, oh, if we have a commission with 31, 32, 33 commissioners, I think it's not really a problem. We have already a kind of hierarchy within the commission. When I look to the German government have so many people in there. So, yeah, you can talk about reducing of the number of commissioners, but I think it's really not a problem. Then always the problem if the European Parliament becomes too large. I don't see it. Yeah, it becomes larger, but it's not a real problem. So the only real problem I see, especially for the smaller countries, is the case of the veto. When we come to a country like Ukraine, we have the problem, especially with agriculture. But I also see there are very pragmatic solutions. When Ukraine really becomes a member, then I'm sure that the Ukraine agriculture system don't need the subsidies because they are more competitive without subsidies than many European, not European, Ukraine also is European, than European Union farmers. So I'm sure that we can make a deal with Ukraine that the Ukrainian farmers don't need subsidies when Ukraine becomes a member. And so I'm very in favor to make very pragmatic solutions. Also, I'm sure that we have to make a deal with Ukraine that they have not full access to the agriculture market from the beginning of their membership, because then the farmers will be a veto player against the membership of Ukraine. So we will have as free movement of people when Poland, for example, become a member, and Germany said that Polish workforce, it takes some years that they can move freely to Germany. And so I think with this kind of pragmatic solutions, it will be possible. And I think for the European Union, the biggest problem is the more veto players. So we will solve this.
Milan, would you like to go next?
Yes, I'll try. Chapter 27, environment. Of course, I mean that will be the most difficult part of accession talks for both Montenegro, Albania, for anybody, because I'm from Slovakia. Our accession in 2024 came in a different era. The acquis on environment and climate change has expanded since then. They're also very costly. Anybody who visited nice countries of Montenegro and Albania know that there is a lot to do with environment protection and whatever you have there. So yes, both countries will need help, more support. We are not there yet. These chapters are not even, if you look at the table that is in annex to the Commission report, you can see at what stage they are on this particular chapter. Commission is not delusional here. And also on the rule of law, this is the emphasis also for Montenegro. So they closed the so-called interim benchmark report last year, but on some promises that they made, they haven't delivered yet because it's a very wide coalition in Podgorica. You need consensus on everything. So I think Commission should be strict and fair because after all, it's a merit-based process, and they want member states in the Council to agree with the Commission's assessment. We had an internal discussion at the DGAP a few weeks ago exactly on Montenegro and Albania with our colleagues also from the Federal Foreign Office. I think the message there was an invitation to Commission to have an honest discussion, at least within the European Council, on the rule of law and other measures. But I think on environment, we have, and on the discussion, there is no smoke screen or no attempts by the Commission to pretend that it's not difficult. And I expect this chapter to be closed among the last ones, by the way. Now on Serbia, very quickly, and I see in the audience more knowledgeable people on this, including in our queue for questions. Srđan Mastrojević was one of the chief negotiators on behalf of Serbian government before President Vučić turned authoritarian. So we can tell us more on that. Look, Serbia we have a problem of size when we look at enlargement. It's Ukraine and everybody else. Ukraine is bigger in size, in population, in economy, in policy problems like cohesion and agriculture than everybody else. Within the Balkans, we have a Serbia problem, which means that the size and geographic centrality of Serbia it's half of the GDP. It's the former capital of Yugoslavia. It is so. It's unfortunately it's also the country which is most explosive nowadays. We have unresolved problems elsewhere, Serbia, Kosovo, or Bosnia and Herzegovina. But the student protest against the lack of transparency and lack of investigation of these deadly incidents in Novi Sad when 16 people died means that Serbia is blocked, and there could be violence again, as we saw in August, anytime soon. So I think the Commission here, this is a big change in the package. Without taking too much time, I think the Commission, the President von der Leyen, during her visit to the region, to Belgrade, delivered a message that, sorry, you have to be more inclusive towards the protest. You have to do what you promised, so change the electoral laws and electoral registry so that the next snap, I think we are moving to snap elections to Serbia. The big question mark is whether they would be legitimate and acceptable, and they need to do a lot within the parliament, within the current parliament, in an inclusive way between the ruling camp and the opposition. And there are also civil society experts that are being attacked by the pro-government press as almost in the Russian way, as the
Milan, I want to follow your suggestion and just pick up the question or the comment by Mr. Mastorovic. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I would just be very brief and say a couple of points. First, I think that this report that we witnessed is showing that the enlargement is alive, and this is a very important message for the region. Obviously, there are some very good and fresh ideas, and I would like to say that some of the ideas that were highlighted in this enlargement package, like restrictive veto rights, are coming from a think tank community organization that I'm honored to chair, together with our colleagues from Center for European Policy Studies, wrote about this idea 4 years ago. So there is a huge capacity within the civil society that can help and support European Commission in thinking of how to come up with these creative solutions in order to keep the momentum. The second point, I am disappointed that European Commission failed to produce, but inshallah they're going to do it in a couple of weeks, the pre-enlargement policy review. I think this is extremely important for the sake of credibility and integrity of the process. This is the sign that the European Union is preparing itself for the enlargement. And this is a very valid argument for all of us who are promoting the enlargement in the region towards those authoritarian narratives who are championing the idea or narrative that EU doesn't want us anyway. So we need to have very concrete signs that EU is prepared for the enlargement. And third and final is on Serbia. Serbia is a problem of enlargement. It's not a disappointed, it's not a sad story, but it's a problem. And as Milan said, we are facing a a paradoxical situation that a country that could be a Piedmont of the Western Balkans enlargement is rather backsliding in the major areas close related with the value base of the EU enlargement process. The paradox is also that Serbia has maybe the strongest capacity to push forward, but is failing to do that. And it shows that Serbia at this stage is a broken country. It is a divided country. And all those who are advocating for everybody to jump on the same platform for the sake of the EU integration have quite a wrong perception. I'm not going to say delusional, but very wrong perception of how deep division within the Serbian society today is. Government has no capacity to resolve this crisis, so there is a huge need for the European Union to show up finally with a moderating role and moderating ideas. And finally, with regards Mr. Hofreiter's reference to the bad cop, we don't need bad cops. We just need good friends. We need honest friends who, when they're visiting Serbia, they're not shy of saying that spade is a spade, that black is not white. And we expect that all high-level visitors coming from the EU institutions, EU member states behave in that way. Ms. von der Leyen did a good job, but before her, Ms. Kos introduced a very fresh narrative that needs to be followed up by all the others who are visiting Belgrade.
Thanks so much, Mr. Mastovic. Before I give our panelists a chance to react, I also want to pick up two more questions from the chat. One is, and they both relate to the populations in candidate countries. One is by Henning Bergi asking about the Russian population in Montenegro and how this will have an effect on the process. And then a question by Livia Henschel is more generally about the social dimension of enlargement. She's asking about not just political tendencies in the candidate countries, but also the kinds of offers that the European Union has in terms of social dialogue and convergence and so on. So the social dimension of accession. Linn, you haven't spoken for a while. Would you like to go first and pick up some of the issues that are left out there?
Well, the question on the Russian population in Montenegro, Milan is way more informed about that. But maybe on the social dimension, I totally agree that this process of treaty ratification, looking at Denmark and France, Ireland, the countries that have popular referenda, you always have the chance, have the possibility that this is linked to not the question posed, but broader discomfort and in the society. And I think this is also the reason why there needs a very proactive approach. There's the saying, well, either we have a enlarged European Union when looking at the Western Balkan states, or the population of the Western Balkan states will be coming to Europe anyways. If you look at the migration flows at the moment, there's a huge loss of brains from the region towards the European Union. So that's in a way happening anyways. So I think we need also this narrative of what does it bring to Europe? So what does it cater for? How do we already have the business connection, the civic connection? So this more positive narrative. But at the end of the day, those ratification processes, that's the political challenge that's always attached, that there is the potential that it'll be hijacked internally. But that's also the reason why we need to be prepared. The governments, mostly where you have those referenda, need to be proactively communicating about this already now.
Thanks. Milan, on Russian population Montenegro?
Oh, yes. It's first of all, Montenegro is a NATO member already since 2019, so they're dealing with this issue even before the Russian war in Ukraine started. You have in Budva, in particular on the coast, a lot of property owners that are Russian. Things have changed and evolved also since 2022. Some of them left Montenegro. Russia closed its consulate. I would here trust both NATO and the Montenegro security services to do their job. Of course, it's more difficult if you have a broad coalition which relies in the parliament on parliament majority on the pro-Serbian bloc, which is also includes pro-Russian elements. However, there is a lot of very sort of negative scenarios on Montenegro internal politics, which has not materialized so far. Montenegro still recognizes Kosovo. There was no recognition as demanded by part of the coalition. Without going into details, I would say Montenegro in Budva, you have Ukraine refugees living alongside some of the Russian exiles. Many of them are anti-Putin. The bigger challenge I see here is what Nicola asked about, the spoiler effect of Serbia. If the EU enlargement moves on in the region without Serbia, the largest country, it will challenge the narrative of President Vučić, which is, I am the modernizer. I can get you to Europe and keep good relations with Russia and China. The brethren of small country of Montenegro that is closely linked to Serbia, if they would be closer to entering, this will have also a huge domestic political impact for Vučić. So the expectation is that they will try to press their buttons within Montenegro. I think there are two ways how to move about it. You have people within the EPP, sister party of President Vučić's party, that say, let's then reward also Serbia. They have fulfilled everything to open the so-called third cluster of chapters on the internal market and competition. And then you have, and I would be in this second school of thought, double down on enlargement with the other parts of the region, with the countries that are moving and reforming, because that will create also positive impact on Belgrade.
Thanks. I want to pick up a question by Peter Linke.
This just one brief question to all panelists, but especially Mr. Hofreiter. What is the EU doing to help overcoming the ongoing cultural clash between Bulgaria and Northern Macedonia?
I think the main problem here is that when I talk to people from Northern Macedonia, from the parliament, they say, of course, we could change our constitution again, but we want a guarantee that after we have done this, it will not happen again. And I think that less European Commission, but more powerful countries like Germany or France, which are in the role to say now we signal a stop to Bulgaria. Because the bilateralization of the enlargement process is a big problem, and I think it's a role of powerful countries within European Union to make it totally clear to countries like Bulgaria that will not be accepted, and it should not be done in a way that Germany is dictating what is happening within the European Union for its own interests, but that we are one of the countries who are the guarantee countries that everybody plays for the rules. So I think we have to put a lot of pressure on Bulgaria to stop it in a kind of way to guarantee Northern Macedonia that it will not happen again. And then I think also we have to do a lot of more things. For example, also it would help if the Digital Service Act would be really used, because Bulgaria and the politicians in Bulgaria have a lot of pressure because of the huge amount of propaganda, disinformation, which is brought into Bulgaria by Russia and Russian allies. So we also have to help Bulgaria to fight off the Russian pressure and the Russian propaganda. We had all eyes on Moldova on this issue, and that was also very important. But we forgot a little bit about Bulgaria, which is also a victim of Russian propaganda. And so we have to put pressure, but also help.
Since we are coming to an end, I'd like to ask a final round of questions for all our panelists. If you could picture a sort of best case scenario in 5 years from now, where would we be? What's realistic? And also, what can we do in Germany as think tankers or as MPs to move us closer to that best case scenario in 5 years' time? I'd like to go in reverse order of how we started. So starting with Linn, then Milan, and then Tony to finish it off. We've got about 90 seconds each maximum. Over to you, Linn.
Well, that's the easy question for the end. I think at the moment we see a lot of dynamic, but at the same time disenchantment with the process. So maybe also very briefly, North Macedonia, I think it also has very much this disenchantment part, the reason why the current government is acting as it is acting. So I would really hope that in 5 years' time, we have 29 member states. And I think what we could do as a community, but also on a political level, is raise the public awareness, show best cases, show also very precisely how it can be done further in the process. Now, looking at the accession treaties, I think there's a lot to be learned from the past 20 years, from the last accession round, to look much more into that. And then also I think it's important for especially the German government to put more political capital on this and have a commitment towards the region. What I said earlier, if you reform, we are ready.
Milan.
Jan, you asked about the optimistic scenario?
Yes.
Yes. So in 5 years, I hope we could see 2 or 3 countries in the process of ratification of the accession treaty. So Montenegro, Albania, and Moldova, if they manage to solve the Transnistria issue. Perhaps the surprising sort of dynamic element could be Iceland, that will have a referendum on membership, EU membership in 2027, because I think we need politically something that would change the dynamics. Montenegro and Albania, with all due respect, are too small to sort of bring this to France, and so much will depend on the French presidential elections or domestic developments in Netherlands, including Germany, because I haven't heard Chancellor Merz basically saying, and without German leadership in the council, this will not happen. Yes, I want to enlarge. I think the candidates are credible, and we want them in the EU. He came close to this in London at the Berlin Process Summit. A nice diplomatic sort of move was that the host of the next Berlin Process Summit will be Montenegro, to build up credibility and sort of visibility. But again, without the leadership of this federal government within the EU Council, I don't see this optimistic scenario happening.
Tony.
I hope that Montenegro and Albania are members or in the ratification process. I hope that Ukraine has won the war, whatever it means by then, and it's also close to become a member. And also, I'm looking to Iceland, and I hope that we have progress on this. And I totally agree with Milan. Many depends on Germany, but also on the French elections. So we have to do a lot of work within Germany, because Germany is the key player in so many issues.
And Tony, if I may piggyback on this, we didn't mention war in Ukraine enough. I think so much depends for European security, but also for enlargement eventually how the war ends. Within 5 years, I hope we will have peace and Ukraine will still be a functioning state closer to the membership.
And of course, we will dedicate morning briefings to the situation in Ukraine in the future, as we have done in the past. But for now, let me thank our panelists for this insightful, interesting morning briefing today. Let me remind you again that we are doing an event on the 13th of November at DGAP on the strategic outlook for EU enlargement and Germany's missing debate. So do check this out on our website. Stay tuned for more events at the German Council on Foreign Relations, DGAP, and once again, big round of applause, virtual applause for our panelists today. Have a lovely day. Thanks and goodbye.